Assalamu alaikum, Facebook fam. This part 10, The Awakening, A Nation on the Rise. Part 10, The Awakening, A Nation on the Rise. Speech 2018. So now, Facebook fam, we're gonna get right into it because we ain't got no time to waste. So Revelation 11:3. If we go to Revelation 11:3. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,203 days, clothed in sackcloth. So Allah is telling everybody, let me check my device, that in the last days, a prophecy was to come about. So this prophecy was to take place with that child crying in the wilderness. That child that was giving his voice in the wilderness. Ishmael is that child. Ishmael is that child, the fulfillment of Israel, the fulfillment of that symbolical picture of Ishmael crying in the wilderness. It's me, Kaba Kashib Muhammad. So I'm the fulfillment of Ishmael crying in the wilderness. I'm that child that's crying in the wilderness out here. I'm not in the Nation of Islam, amongst the Islamic scientists. I'm in the wilderness out here in the battlefield out here. I ain't hide behind no bean pie. I don't hide behind bean pies and finding calls and bow ties. I'm out here in the wilderness fighting the beast. So the child crying in the wilderness out here, Kaba Kashif Muhammad. So now if we go to Matthew 12:40. Moving right along. Moving right along. We get down to Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So Jonah was in the belly of the beast. Jonah was in the wilderness out here. Jonah wasn't hiding like a coward behind no bean pie. Jonah was in the wilderness in the belly of the beast for 3 days and 3 nights, 3 years. The Son of Man was to come that same way in the wilderness, in the heart of the earth, for 3 days and 3 nights. So now, if we mess Jonah up with the Son of Man, excuse me, then we go to Revelation 12:6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed up there 1,203 days. So after the child in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 through 6, and there appeared a great one in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. So, and she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness. So now, this woman that gave birth to the child, this woman symbolizes Master Paul Muhammad and Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that laid that universal lowdown, that universal truth, to wake up a infinite knowledge that was to receive that knowledge in the wilderness. Not no child that was in the Nation of Islam learning all that knowledge in the Nation of Islam. This child had to learn Islam in the wilderness. That's why he's styled as a child, because he's an infinite knowledge. So Allah God was to feed this child in the wilderness. He was not to come amongst the Islamic congregation, amongst the Islamic scientists. So now, If we line Jonah up, and the Son of Man, and the child that the woman gave birth to, all these different, 3 different people was crying in the wilderness. And we messed that up with Ishmael, the child of Hagar, the voice of the one crying in the wilderness. So now, if we go to Matthew 27:45 through 53. It says that now from the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land until the 9th hour. 6, 7, 8, 9, that's 3 years. 3 days and 3 nights Jonah was in the belly of the beast. 3 days and 3 nights the Son of Man was building the heart of the earth. Now from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, which symbolizes 3 years again, it was darkness all over the land. That confusion in the Nation of Islam in the White House. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Ali, Ali, Lama Sabachthani, my Lord, why hast thou forsaken me? So now we know that this Son of Man and Jonah and the child crying in the wilderness and the child that the woman gave birth to, it all symbolizes Jesus. Jesus hanging on the cross of universal truth, the full interpretation of the universal law, and the different false ideologies in the Nation of Islam, sorcery, witchcraft, and Dianetics. You got one nature perpendicular going up, and you got another nature going cross, which is the lower nature of the black man, which symbolizes the cross. We at the crossroads now. So the Jews infiltrated the Nation of Islam and imposed false ideologies, Dianetics, sorcery, and witchcraft. So at that time of that hour that the Jews was to infiltrate the Nation of Islam, not 42 months. Now the child was to come and start his prophecy at the same time. So we got falsehood going on, and then we got the universal law going on. So now we got the universal truth that I'm teaching, and then we got the Dianetics and the witchcraft in the Nation of Islam going on at the same time. So now the black man is at the crossroad. So now Jesus is hanging up on the cross of death, and Jesus is hanging on the cross of death, but at the same time, the universal light, the universal law is coming in the cloud. So now, imagine that. So now, if we go to Deuteronomy 28, 49 through 53. Now, when Allah God came and brought the Islam to the world in 1930, he tore down the Elijah Muhammad. Allah God son Mustafa Muhammad cleaned them up and put his light in the Mustafa Muhammad. Mustafa Muhammad tore down the Elijah Muhammad. And when he tore down the Elijah Muhammad the truth, Elijah built the Nation of Islam. But Allah God says that if the people would not comply with the universal light, that he will bring a nation against them, that people, against the Nation of Islam. It says that the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle fly, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person or the old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates, until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustest, through all thy land, and shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which thy Lord thy God has given thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thy own body, and the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord God hath given thee, in the siege, and in the straitness, wherewith thy enemies shall distress thee. So now, we know that that nation, that God said he was going to sin against the nation of Islam if they wouldn't comply with the universal law that our Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. That nation symbolizes that child crying in the wilderness. That nation symbolizes Ishmael. That nation symbolizes, remember I told y'all that God in Genesis 21 verse 13, and also of the son of thy bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. And then if we go to verse 18, it says, arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. So that great nation symbolizes that child crying in the wilderness. That symbolizes me. I'm the fulfillment of Ishmael. I'm the fulfillment of that symbolical picture of Ishmael. So that child crying in the wilderness is the knowledge that he crying is the universal law, the fulfillment, the pinnacle of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Allah God is using that as a weapon to come against the nation of Islam, to lift up the skirt of the nation of Islam, to show the world the shame of Farrakhan in the nation of Islam. Now let us move on. So that's the weapon that God is using. That's the rain, the hail, the snow, and the earthquakes. The universal law is the weapon. The fulfillment, the pinnacle, the universal truth is what God is using to cleanse his temple, to avenge his temple, to come against Farrakhan and all these hypocrites in the nation of Islam. Allah God is using this universal truth, the will of Allah, the full expoundment of it. The pinnacle of this universal truth is what I'm bringing. And that's the weapon that God is using against the wicked, to destroy the wicked. That's the sword. So now let us move on. So now we know for 3 years that this child was to be crying in the wilderness, preaching the universal light and using that universal light to come against the nation of Islam. Now if we go to in Ezekiel chapter 16, is when God, in the person of Mustafa Muhammad, made his appearance in Detroit, Michigan in 1930. If we go to the book of Ezekiel, we see that God said, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations. Jerusalem is the nation of Islam. And say, thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan, and thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother Hittite. And as for thy nativity, in the day thou was born, thy navel was not cut, nor was thou washed in water to supple thee. Thou was not salted at all, nor swallowed at all. None I pitied thee to do any of these unto thee, to have compassion upon thee. But thou was cast out in the open field, open field to the loathing of thy person in the day that thou was born. And when I, this is referring to Allah God in the person of Mustafa Muhammad, who taught Elijah Muhammad in 1930. And when I passed by thee and saw thee polluted in thy own blood, I said unto thee, when thou was in thy blood, live. Yea, I said unto thee, when thou was in thy blood, live. And I caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field, and thou was increasing, waxing great, and thou art come to an excellent ornaments. Thy breasts are fashioned, and thy hair is grown, whereas thou was naked and bare. Now when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, the time was the time of love. And I spread my skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness. Yeah, I covered thy nakedness. Yeah, I swear unto thee and entered into a covenant with thee, said the Lord God, and thou becamest mine. And then I washed thee with the water. Yeah, I thoroughly washed away thy blood from thee, and I anointed thee with oil. I clothed thee also with broidered work, and shod thee with badger skin. And I girded thee about with fine linen, and covered thee with silk. I decked thee also with ornaments, and I put bracelets upon thy hand, and a chain on thy neck. And I put a jewel in thy forehead. That's the universal law. The jewel that he put in your forehead is the universal law. So when Allah God and the person of Mustafa Muhammad came in 1930 and raised up the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he put a jewel in our forehead. He taught us universal knowledge. He taught us this universal truth, the will of Allah. So now it says that if we go to verse 36, we in Ezekiel chapter 16 now. Verse 36. Now we're on verse 36. Thus said the Lord God, because thy filthiness was poured out, and thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms, with the lovers and with all the idols of thy abominations. Now this is referring to after the God came and found us naked and bare in 1930 in Detroit, Michigan. We had no knowledge. We was in a terrible condition. We was living in a state of scrape, filth, and evil. That's all we was living. That's all we knew was a knowledge that was contrary to our nature. We was living in a state of destitution. And now like God cleaned Master Paul Muhammad up and gave him his spiritual light, Master Paul Muhammad came and brought the universal light to America in Detroit, Michigan, and raised up the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And Elijah Muhammad built the Nation of Islam. And that knowledge cleaned a lot of brothers and sisters up spiritually. Took us away from the abominable acts that we was committing back then. And brought us on that straight perpendicular path. But we deviated. So this is what verse 36 is all about. Thus said the Lord God, because thy filthiness was poured out, and thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms, with thy lovers, and with all the idols of thy abominations, and by the blood of thy children which thou didst given unto them. Behold, therefore I will gather all thy lovers, and whom thou hast taken pleasure, and all them that thou hast loved, with all them that thou hast hated, and I will even gather them around about thee against thee, and will discover thy nakedness unto them, that they may see all thy nakedness. And I will judge thee as a woman that break wedlock, and shed blood are judged. And I will give thee blood and fury and jealousy, and I will also give thee into their hand, and they shall throw down thy eminent place, and shall break down the high places. They shall strip thee also of thy clothes, and they shall take thy fair jewels, and leave thee naked and bare. They shall also bring up a company against thee, and they shall stone thee with stones, and thrust thee through with their swords. And they shall turn thy houses with fire, and execute judgment upon thee in the sight of many women. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot, and thou also shalt give higher anymore. Shall give no higher anymore. So now, let's see where we at. So now, when the God came and showed us mercy in 1930, cleaned us up with the universal light, made us decent people, decent, respectable people, because we were just coming out of slavery. We was in the animalistic state of mind, where the white man had broke us down, mentally and spiritually. So Allah God comes along and in 1930 brings the universal truth, the creative energy that the black people needed to connect with in order to resurrect into their righteous state of mind. So Honorable Elijah Muhammad cleans us up with the universal light. But as time progressed, Farrakhan took over the Nation of Islam and played the harlot with all these different religious ideologies, Dianetics, sorceries, and all these different witchcraft. Both the people into Baal worshiping. So now this is what God telling us right now. And if we go to Jeremiah 7. If we go to Jeremiah 7, 20 through 27. Okay, hold on. If we go to 1 minute, fam. Y'all just be patient. Okay, if we go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 7, verse 20 through 22. As for the beauty of his ornament, he said in majesty, but they made the images of their abominations and of their detestable things therein. Therefore have I set it far from them, and I will give it into the hands of strangers for a prey, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall pollute it. My face will I turn also from them, that they shall pollute my secret place, for the robbers shall enter into it and defile it. So now Allah is telling you that the Nation of Islam, as for the beauty of his ornament, he said it in majesty, but they made images of their abominations and of their detestable things therein. Therefore have I set it far from them. So now, basically what Allah is saying is that when he came in 1930, found us in the modern civilization, he brought us the universal law. And he brought us the majesty, which is the will of Allah. But it says that, but they made images of their abominations, Baal worshiping all these different idols. So Allah took it away from the Nation of Islam and gave it into the robbers, the thieves, the pirates. The rich Jews came and infiltrated the Nation of Islam and took it. Came and brought the Dianetics and the sorceries and the Scientology into the Nation of Islam. Allah said, my face will I turn also from thee, and they shall pollute my secret place. For the robbers shall enter into it and defile it. So the robbers is the Jewish people that infiltrated the Nation of Islam. So now let us move on. So now, if we go to Deuteronomy 28, if we go to Deuteronomy 28, Allah says that, Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 29. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments and his statute which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Curse shall be in the city, and curse shall thou be in the field. Curse shall be thy basket and thy store. Curse shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Curse shall be when thou comest in, and curse shall be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until thou hast consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with a consummation, and with a fever, and with a inflammation, and with a scream burning, and with the sword, and with the blasting, and with the mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass. Brass, remember that word brass now, because I'm going to get deep into it. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thy feet shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee until thou be destroyed. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. thou shalt go out one way against them, and peace 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed unto all kingdoms of the earth. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall pray them away. The Lord will smite thee with a botch of Egypt, and with the Emirates, and with the scab, and with the itch, whereof thou canst not be healed. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness, and astonishment of heart. And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. So now, these are the curses that Allah promised the Nation of Islam if they don't comply with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, if we go to the book of Obadiah, if we go to the book of Obadiah, moving right along, if we go to the book of Obadiah, now Allah promised to send people in to pollute the temple, the Nation of Islam. The Jews infiltrated the Nation of Islam, and when the Jews infiltrated the Nation of Islam, this is where the book of Obadiah gives us a keen understanding of what went on when the Jews infiltrated the Nation of Islam and brought the Dianetics and the Scientology and all these sorceries and witchcraft. The book of Obadiah, starting at verse 6. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in them. So now it's saying that all the people that thy confederacy, meaning that all the people that Minister Louis Farrakhan conspired with, all his lovers, all these different nations that's bringing all these different ideologies in the Nation of Islam. Okay, all the men of that confederacy has brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. Now we go to verse 8. Shall I not in the day, said the Lord, even destroy the wise men of Eden, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? And thy mighty men, O Timon, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For the violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee. So the violence against thy brother Jacob symbolizes all the violence that the Farrakhan and his followers committed against the true believers in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It always been war in the Nation of Islam between the true believers in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the followers of Farrakhan. Farrakhan ain't never, the followers of Farrakhan ain't never got along with the true believers in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the true believers in the universal truth, the will of Allah. It always been murdering and chaos and confusion in the Nation of Islam. So now it says that, we go to verse 11. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away captives his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates. Foreigners entered into his gates. His gates symbolizes the Nation of Islam as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So foreigners entered into the Nation of Islam. The foreigners symbolizes the rich Jews that infiltrated the Nation of Islam and brought in all the different ideologies, false ideologies, Scientology, and all the sorceries and witchcraft. Okay, now, if we go to, it says that in the day that thou stoodest on the other side, this talking about Farrakhan now. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was one of them. Even thou was as one of them. So when the foreigners infiltrated the nation of Islam, when the Jews infiltrated the nation of Islam, the one that God said he was going to send in there for not complying with his commandments, the universal law as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So now when the Jews entered into the nation of Islam, it says that in the day that thou stood on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was as one of them. So Farrakhan joined forces with them when they came in. Farrakhan joined forces with the Jews when they came and infiltrated the nation of Islam. Because it says that even thou was as one of them. But thou should not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger. Neither should thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither should thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. Thou shouldst not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yet thou should not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor laid hands on them, their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither should thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. So now it said, neither should thou have stood in the crossway. So this is referring to the minister Louis Farrakhan that stood in the crossway to cut off those of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that did escape when the Jews infiltrated the nation of Islam. It was some that held on to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and escaped. But the minister Louis Farrakhan, it said, neither should thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. So the ones that did escape, the minister Louis Farrakhan stood in the crossway to further confuse the brothers that did escape. So minister Louis Farrakhan stood there to cut them off, to further confuse these brothers and lead them away from the universal truth, the will of Allah as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now let us move on. Then it says that neither thou should not have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape, neither should thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the days of distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yeah, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, in the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. So now, if we go to okay, we got plenty of time. If we go to page 42 of the true history of Master Fard Muhammad, we go to page 42. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that this part of the Masonic ritual was added in 1725, along with the book of the Masons' Sonic Constitution prepared by the Reverend Jones Anderson. The proof of the absence of the story in their Bible as a true happening may be found in the Bible, 1 Kings 7th chapter, 13th verse. You will see there that Hiram finished the work he was supposed to do for the Solomon. Yet according to the ritual of the third degree death of Hiram, you will notice that Hiram was still putting work on the trestle board for the fellow craftsmen when he was attacked by the ruffians, Jubilo, Jubila, and Jubilam. These three are symbolized as England, France, and America. The east gate is Africa, the west gate is the West Indies, and the north corner of the temple is North America. The USA, United States, England, and France did enslave the black man, but America is the one who killed him by fixing him so he would not have any knowledge of himself, and then gave him the name Negro and buried him in the graveyard of the King James Version of the Bible. So now, Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling us that the three nations, the people that infiltrated the Nation of Islam, who Farrakhan joined forces with, was England, France, and America. So these are the three nations that infiltrated the Nation of Islam. These Jewish nations that infiltrated the Nation of Islam and defiled the temple. Took the people who took the light away from, took the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad away from the Nation of Islam and brought in all these sorceries and Dianetics and Scientology, all these different false ideologies. And when they came in, the book of Obadiah tells us that the minister Louis Farrakhan joined forces with them. It says right here in the book of Obadiah, verse 11, in the day that thou stood on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captives, his forces and foreigners entered into his gates, the gates of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was as one of them. So when they came in, Minister Louis Farrakhan joined forces with them. And then it says right here, neither should thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither should thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. So after he joined forces, Minister Louis Farrakhan joined forces with the Jews when they came in the Nation of Islam. He the ones, the brothers that held on to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Minister Louis Farrakhan stood in the crossway to finish them off. Imagine that. This is the work of the Minister Louis Farrakhan after he joined forces with the Jews when they infiltrated the Nation of Islam. And verse Obadiah, verse 14 says, neither should thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that did escape. So now, moving right along. If we go to 1 Kings, if we go to 1 Kings 7:13, it says that, and King Solomon's son and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widowed son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass. Remember that word brass now. And he was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works of brass. And he became to the King Solomon and wrought all his work. Then as we go to verse 40, 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 40 through 48. And Hiram made levers and shovels and basins. So Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he had made with King Solomon for the house of the Lord. And 2 pillars and 2 bowls of the chapiters that were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters, which were upon the top of the pillars, and 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, even 2 rows of pomegranates for 1 network to cover the 2 bowls of the chapiters that were upon the pillars. Okay, moving right along, it says that, verse 45, and the pots and the shovels and the basins and all these vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon for the house of the Lord were of bright brass. Excuse me. So Hiram made vessels of brass. Remember that word brass now. And Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceeding many. Neither was the weight of brass found out. And Solomon made all the vessels that pertain unto the house of the Lord, the altar of gold. So Solomon made the vessels of gold. Solomon made the vessels of universal law, bought the universal law, and made are vessels of gold. Solomon bought the universal truth. So the vessels that Solomon made, which symbolizes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Bible, was the vessels of gold. What the showbread was, the universal truth, the will of Allah. But the ram, then it says that, and Solomon made all the vessels that pertain unto the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, and the table of gold whereupon the showbread was. So Hiram made vessels of brass. Hiram, which symbolizes the minister Louis Farrakhan, made vessels of brass. But Solomon made the vessels of gold. Solomon made the pure Muslims. Honorable Elijah Muhammad made pure Muslims with the will of Allah, the universal truth. But Solomon made vessels of brass. Now let us move on. So now, if we go to, let's go to Surah 44 and see what brass means, what that word brass is. We getting hot now. We get right on the trail of this devil. Surah 44. Start Surah 44, 43 through 59. Let's roll.
The despicable tree of Zaqqum, the food of the arch sinners. Act like molten copper, it will boil in their bellies, as the boiling of scalding water. Word shall then pass about the guilty, take hold of him, then drag him into the midst of hell. Pour boiling water upon his head by way of torment to him. It will be said to him, suffer this punishment of yours which you doubted. You deemed yourself as if you were the mighty, the honorable one. This, of course, is the very punishment about which you used to wrangle. As for the righteous, they shall be lodged in havens of peace and security, the midst of a land of gardens and springs. They shall wear fine silk and heavy brocade, and will be sitting face to face. Shall it actually happen, and we shall pair them with pure maidens having beautiful large eyes. They will order therein every kind of fruit, and will be safe and secure. They will meet therein no death after the first death met by them in the world, and Allah saved them from the torment of the hell. All this will take place by way of grace from your Lord. That is the very great achievement indeed. We have made this Quran easy in your Arabic tongue, so that the people may take heed. Await their end, for they are also awaiting yours.
Okay, now we know that.
Hamim.
So we know that we know that the Quran tells us in Surah 44 1 second, fam. Okay. We know that in Surah 44 it tells us that we're in Surah 44 43 through 59.
The despicable tree of Zaqqum, be the the food of the arch sinners. Will act like molten copper. It will boil in their bellies, as the boiling of scalding water. The word shall then pass about the guilty. Take hold of him, then drag him into the midst of hell.
So we know that the brass it will act like molten copper. So copper and brass is the same thing. So the brass symbolizes the hell, the falsehood, the sorcery, the witchcraft, the Dianetics. So this is what the brass symbolizes. So this is what Hiram made vessels of brass. So now, if we know that Solomon made the vessels of gold, but the Hiram came and made the vessels of brass. So if we go to Surah 34, let's go to Surah 34. Verse 10 through 14. Now in the Quran, in the Bible makes Honorable Elijah Muhammad Solomon and makes Hiram the minister Louis Farrakhan. The Bible makes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Solomon the one that came and built the vessels of gold, and it makes the minister Louis Farrakhan, Hiram, the ones that came and made the vessels of brass. Falsehood. But if we go to the Quran makes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad David and makes the Hiram Minister Louis Farrakhan Solomon. So now let us go to let us go to Surah 34, verse 10 through 14. Now listen closely.
Certainly we bestowed our gracious favors on David. Said, O you dwellers of the mountains, obey him. We assigned the birds and the swift-footed horses their duty, and made the iron soft and pliant for him. We said to him, make full-length coats of mail to cover the whole body, forging lengths of proper measure for their smooth working. We also said to him and his followers, do righteous deeds. I am a keen observer of what you do.
So now, in Surah 34, verse 10, and surely we bestowed our gracious favors on David. We said, O you believers of the mountains, obey him. And we assigned the birds and the swift four-footed horses and their duty, and we made the iron soft and pliant for him. So David symbolizes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Quran. But the Bible makes Solomon the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But the Quran makes David is the father of Solomon. So the Quran makes Solomon the Quran makes David the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Quran. And the Bible makes Solomon the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Okay, now as far as Hiram in the Bible makes the minister Louis Farrakhan, Hiram, the one that made the vessels of brass. But the Quran makes Solomon the minister Louis Farrakhan, Hiram, who made the vessels of brass. Now if we go to verse 12, I'm explaining to y'all what I'm talking about.
We made such winds serve Solomon, the blowing of which in the forenoon, and thus helped sailing of his ships, was equal to a voyage of a month by the other ships. Its blowing in the afternoon was also equal to a voyage of a month by them. And we made a spring of molten copper to flow for him.
Okay, and we made such winds serve Solomon. So the wind symbolizes the Jews that infiltrated the nation of Islam. When they came into the nation of Islam and infiltrated the nation of Islam and brought all these false ideologies in the nation of Islam. And it says in Surah 34, verse 12, and we made such winds serve Solomon. So Solomon here symbolizes the minister Louis Farrakhan. This is Hiram here. This is Hiram in the Quran. This is the Hiram, the one that makes the vessels of brass. So now it says that And we made such winds serve Solomon, the blowing of which in the forenoon, and thus helping sailing of his ships. So the winds, when the Jews infiltrated the nation of Islam, the minister Louis Farrakhan joined forces with the Jews. And it says that we made such winds serve Solomon. So they started serving Solomon, which symbolizes Farrakhan. Okay, Solomon in the Bible symbolizes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But they switched it up in the Quran and made Solomon Farrakhan. Made Solomon Haram in the Quran. So Solomon in the Quran symbolizes Farrakhan. And we made such winds serve Solomon, the blowing of which in the forenoon. So the winds symbolizes the Jews, the France, France, who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. One second, fam. I had to put a charge on my arm. Okay. So now we go to 42. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that England, France, and America did enslave the black man. So the England, France, and America, the Jews of England, France, and America symbolizes the winds. And we made such winds serve Solomon. So when they came in, they joined forces with Solomon, the minister Louis Farrakhan. Okay? The blowing of which in the forenoon and thus helped sailing of his ships was equal to a voyage of a month by the other ships. Similarly, its blowing in the afternoon was also equal to the voyage of a month by them. And we made a spring of molten copper flow for him. So the molten copper symbolizes the brass, the falsehood, the Dianetics, the sorceries, the witchcraft, Scientology. So now it says right here,
we made such winds serve Solomon, the blowing of which in the forenoon, and thus helped sailing of his ships, was equal to a voyage of a month by the other ships. Its blowing in the afternoon was also equal to a voyage of a month by them. And we made a spring of molten copper to flow for him. So given into his service were some of the jinns, the wild and rebellious mountain tribes, known as Amalekites, but under him as trained craftsmen by the command of his Lord. He also told them, whoever of them deviated from and disobeyed our command, that they should obey Solomon, we shall make him suffer the agony of burning.
So now, it says that, and we made such winds, the Jews, when they infiltrated the nation of Islam, and we made such winds serve Solomon. So these Jews joined forces with Farrakhan, joined forces with the winds, which symbolizes the three nations. The Jews that infiltrated the nation of Islam. Okay? And then it says that, and we made a spring of molten copper flow for him. Molten copper, the brass, the falsehood, the different false ideologies flow for him, Farrakhan. Okay? And then it says that also given to his service was some of the jinns, wild and rebellious mountain tribes known as the Amalekites, who worked under him as trained craftsmen by command of his Lord. Okay? And we also told them, whoever of them deviated or disobeyed our command, that they should obey Solomon. So now the craftsmen that worked upon the minister Louis Farrakhan, the craftsmen that worked upon the minister Louis Farrakhan was the all the followers of the minister Louis Farrakhan. All of his followers that worked upon him. So now if we go, now it says that, and worked under him as trained craftsmen by command of his Lord. Now if we go to verse 13, it says this here, verse 13.
Those jinns, handy craftsmen, made for him, Solomon, whatever he desired, places for worship, and pans and basins as large as the tanks and large and heavy cooking pots well set. And we said, gratefully, O people of David, yet few are my people who are really grateful. And when
now it says that those gins, handicraftsmen, made for him, Solomon, whatever he desired, places for worship, and plans and basins as large as the tanks and large and heavy cooking pots well set on their trefoils due to their large size. And we said, act gratefully, O people of David, yet few are my people who are really grateful. So now the gins that worked upon them, these gins symbolizes all these brothers that's building these months upon the teachings of the minister Louis Farrakhan. Then it says that the jinn made places of worship. All these mosques that's built over the United States that the minister Louis Farrakhan has established. It says that those jinns made for Solomon whatever he desired, places for worship and plans and basins. So now all these brothers in the Nation of Islam up under the minister Louis Farrakhan that got these mosques, all these brothers ain't nothing but preaching brass, falsehood, Dianetics and sorcerers. They work upon they handicraftsmen working upon the Solomon. So now if we go to verse 15.
It was indeed a great sign for Sheba in the homeland. They had 2 gardens, one on the right and one on the left. It said to them, eat of the provisions and enjoy the gifts of your Lord and render him thanks. This is a happy and beautiful land, and the Lord, its protector, turned away. Whereupon we sent against them a devastating flood, and we replaced their 2 excellent gardens by 2 other gardens, and when we ordained death for him, the people only came to know of it through a worthless creature of earth, Solomon's son, eating away his father's staff. When it fell down, the Jew realized then plainly that had they known the secret of the hollowness of the kingdom, they would have rather remained in a state of humiliating torment.